He said he was going to care for his sick father, but what I found instead was my husband, my sister, and a newborn baby, all part of a chilling plan to erase me from existence. The scent of his aftershave still lingered in the hallway, a ghost of the man who had kissed me goodbye just 3 days ago. "I have to go, honey," Mark had said, his face etched with a worry I'd rarely seen in our 5 years of marriage. "It's my dad. He's had a bad fall, and Mom, she's not handling it well. I need to be there." Of course, I understood. I loved his parents, Eleanor and Robert. I'd packed him a small bag myself, throwing in his favorite worn-out sweater and a book I knew he'd never get around to reading, my hands moving on autopilot while my heart ached for his family. He'd hugged me tight, his grip almost desperate. "I'll call you every night. I love you." And just like that, he was gone, his silver sedan disappearing down our quiet suburban street. For the first day, everything felt normal, or as normal as it could be. I sent a text to Eleanor, my mother-in-law. "Thinking of you and Robert, sending all my love and strength. Let me know if you need anything at all." It delivered, but there was no reply. I figured she was overwhelmed at the hospital, her mind entirely focused on her husband. Mark's text that evening was short. "Long day. Dad's stable. Mom's a mess. Too tired to talk. Love you." I sent back a string of heart emojis and told him to get some rest. But as the second day bled into the third, a strange, cold unease started to creep into the edges of my concern. His texts became even more clipped. "Busy. Can't talk now. He's sleeping." When I tried to call him, it would ring twice and then go straight to voicemail. The one time he did answer, the line was full of static and he sounded distant. "Reception is terrible here at the hospital, Sarah. I'll have to call you back." But they didn't live in the middle of nowhere. Their home and the nearest major hospital was in a bustling city just 2 hours away. The excuse felt thin, flimsy, like a worn-out t-shirt. I tried to push the doubts away, telling myself I was being a paranoid wife, that my worry was twisting normal behavior into something sinister. He was stressed. His father was hurt. I needed to be supportive, not suspicious. I busied myself with work, watered the plants, and started sketching out a new design for the nursery we'd been planning. We were trying for a baby, and the thought of our future family was the warm, steady light I clung to in the growing darkness of my anxiety. The breaking point came during a mundane trip to the grocery store. I was in the produce aisle debating between organic and regular avocados when I heard my name. "Sarah, I almost didn't recognize you." It was Maria, a close friend of my mother-in-law. Her face was bright and cheerful. "How are you, dear? I haven't seen you in ages." We made small talk for a minute, and then I put on my most concerned expression. "I'm all right, just so worried about Robert. Mark rushed down there as soon as he heard about the fall." Maria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowed in confusion. Her smile faltered. "The fall? What fall? I just saw Robert and Eleanor this morning at the farmer's market. He was complaining about the price of heirloom tomatoes, same as always. Looked fit as a fiddle to me." The world tilted. The bright lights of the grocery store seemed to dim, and the cheerful pop music playing over the speakers sounded distorted and menacing. Farmer's market? Complaining about tomatoes? I felt the blood drain from my face. I must have looked as horrified as I felt, because Maria's expression shifted to one of deep concern. "Sarah? Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I mumbled something about a misunderstanding, about getting my wires crossed, and practically fled the store, leaving my half-full cart behind. I sat in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white, Maria's words echoing in my head. "Fit as a fiddle, fit as a fiddle." The lie was so blatant, so complete, that it took my breath away. It wasn't just a small white lie. It was a carefully constructed fiction, complete with a sick parent and a distraught mother. Why? Where was he? The 2-hour drive to his parents' house was a blur of tarmac and trees. my mind racing through 1,000 horrific possibilities. Was he in some kind of trouble? Was he with someone else? The thought was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me gasping for air. No, not Mark. Our Mark. The man who held my hand during scary movies and left little love notes in my lunch bag. It wasn't possible. When I pulled onto his parents' street, my heart was a wild drum against my ribs. Everything looked painfully normal. The manicured lawns, the kids riding bikes, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the quiet houses. I parked a block away and walked, my footsteps silent on the pavement. Their house was dark. Eleanor's old Prius was in the driveway, but Mark's sedan was nowhere to be seen. They weren't home. Of course they weren't. They were probably out to dinner, blissfully unaware of the lie their son was telling. My hope, a tiny flickering ember, finally died. He wasn't here. But then I remembered the guest cottage. It was a small one-room building in their backyard that they'd renovated for visitors. Mark had mentioned he'd probably stay there to give his parents some space. My hands trembling, I unlatched the side gate and slipped into the backyard. The garden was dark, the scent of roses hanging heavy in the evening air. And there, at the far end of the lawn, was the cottage, and a light was on. A soft, warm glow spilled from the single large window, illuminating a small patch of grass. I could hear something from inside, the faint murmur of voices and soft, gentle music. My breath caught in my throat. I crept closer, my sneakers silent on the damp lawn, my whole body shaking with a terrifying mixture of dread and determination. I had to know. I reached the window, my body pressed against the cool wood of the cottage wall. It was slightly fogged from the warmth inside. I held my breath, raised a trembling hand, and wiped a small circle clear on the condensation-covered glass. And I froze. Every muscle in my body seized. The air trapped in my lungs burned. Inside, in the soft lamplight, stood my husband, Mark. He wasn't tending to a sick parent. He wasn't on the phone with doctors. He was holding a baby, a tiny, swaddled newborn, nestled against his chest. He was rocking it gently, a look of pure, unadulterated love on his face. A look I had dreamed of him giving our child one day. And standing beside him, her hand resting on his arm as she gazed down at the infant with that very same look of blissful adoration, was my sister. My sister, Emily. The world dissolved into a smear of indistinct shapes and muffled sounds. My own heartbeat hammered in my ears, a frantic, painful rhythm against the cage of my ribs. It felt like I was underwater, watching a silent movie of my life's greatest horror. Mark's face, so familiar, so beloved, was now a stranger's mask, beaming down at a life he had created with the one person I should have been able to trust implicitly. Emily, my younger sister, the one I had shared secrets and clothes and dreams with, looked up and her eyes met Mark's over the baby's head. They smiled at each other, a private, intimate smile of shared joy and deep connection. It was the smile Mark used to give me. In that moment, the acid of betrayal burned through every vein in my body, incinerating 5 years of marriage and a lifetime of sisterhood. I stumbled backwards, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle the raw, guttural sob that threatened to rip out of my throat. A twig snapped under my foot, the sound as loud as a gunshot in the silent garden. Inside, their heads turned toward the window. I ducked below the sill, my back slamming against the rough wooden siding, my lungs refusing to draw a breath. I stayed there, crouched in the dark and the damp, for what felt like an eternity, praying they wouldn't come outside. I could hear their muffled voices again, but they sounded untroubled. The danger had passed. They hadn't seen me. Shaking uncontrollably, I crawled on my hands and knees across the wet grass until I reached the shadows of the large oak tree, then scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't stop running until I was back in my car, fumbling with the keys, my vision blurred by a flood of hot, silent tears. The 2-hour drive home was a fugue state. I don't remember the traffic or the turns. I just remember the images replaying on a torturous loop behind my eyes. Mark's tender expression, Emily's serene smile, the tiny, perfect bundle in his arms. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, the screen lighting up with his name. Mark. The sight of it sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. A text followed. Thinking of you. It's been so hard here. Call you in the morning. Love you. The casual cruelty of his lies was breathtaking. He was living a whole other life. A complete secret life with a wife and child, my sister and a baby, while texting me platitudes and professions of love. I felt like I was splitting in two, the woman who loved him and the woman who now knew the devastating truth. When I finally stumbled through my own front door, our home felt desecrated. The wedding photo on the mantelpiece was a monument to a lie. The scent of his aftershave in the air was the lingering stench of deceit. On the kitchen table where I'd left them were my sketches for the nursery. Whimsical animals, a soft color palette, a mobile of tiny felt stars, a room for a child we were supposedly trying so hard to conceive. A gut-wrenching, hysterical laugh escaped my lips. It sounded alien and mad in the quiet house. While I was tracking my ovulation and dreaming of our baby, he was building a nursery with my sister. I swept the papers off the table, sending them scattering across the floor like dead leaves. My grief solidified into a cold, hard diamond of rage. I needed to know everything. I stormed into his home office, a room I rarely entered, and flicked on the light. His laptop was on the desk. I flipped it open, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The password. Of course. It was my birthday. The irony was so bitter, it tasted like poison. My hands were shaking so hard it took 3 tries to type the numbers correctly. His desktop was neat, organized. I clicked through files, my heart pounding. Financials, work projects, vacation photos, nothing. Then I saw it. A folder on his secondary drive, named something innocuous, Personal Projects. I double-clicked. Inside was another folder, this one titled simply Nightingale. My breath hitched. Nightingale was the name of the street I grew up on, the street where Emily and I had played as children. I clicked it open, and my world ended for the second time that night. It was all there. A meticulous documentation of their affair, photos of them on dates, kissing in front of landmarks I didn't recognize. Then pictures of Emily, progressively more pregnant, glowing and happy, Mark's arm wrapped protectively around her swelling belly. There was a video of a baby shower. Our friends were there. My friends. People who had hugged me and wished me luck on my own fertility journey were smiling and laughing, celebrating the baby my husband was having with my sister. Then came the hospital photos. Mark, looking exhausted but ecstatic, in scrubs, holding the newborn. Emily, beautiful and serene in the hospital bed. Them, together, a perfect family. I scrolled down, my movements jerky and robotic, until I saw a scanned document, a birth certificate. I clicked it open, zooming in on the tiny print, my eyes searching for the name, and there it was, Lily Grace Miller. A sound, a wounded, animalistic cry was torn from my throat. Lily. We had picked that name out together years ago, lying in bed, whispering our dreams for the future into the darkness. If we have a girl, he'd said, I want to name her Lily, for your grandmother. He had stolen my sister. He had stolen my dream of a family, and he had even stolen my daughter's name. My mind was reeling, a chaotic storm of pain and fury. I felt like I was going to be sick. I scrolled blindly, wanting to close the laptop, but unable to look away from the wreckage of my life. And that's when I saw the last file in the folder. It wasn't a photo or a video. It was a PDF document titled simply, The Plan. My blood ran cold. With a trembling finger, I clicked it open. It was a draft of an email written by Mark, addressed to a name I didn't recognize. A lawyer, I presumed. It was a detailed, step-by-step strategy. But it wasn't for a divorce. It was for something far more sinister. He wrote about my desperation to have a baby, my emotional fragility over our fertility struggles. He detailed my erratic moods and obsessive behavior. He was twisting my grief and my hope into a weapon against me. He was meticulously building a case. And then I read the final, chilling line of the draft, the objective of his entire horrific plan, deemed to establish a pattern of mental instability, providing the necessary grounds for an involuntary psychiatric hold, thereby ensuring she is unable to contest the separation agreement or make a claim on my assets. An involuntary psychiatric hold. The words seemed to vibrate in the air, malevolent and suffocating. He wasn't just going to leave me. He was going to destroy me. He was planning to have me committed, to paint me as an unhinged, unstable woman, so he could walk away with everything, free to play house with my sister and the baby who should have been mine. My pain, my longing, my private tears, he had been observing them, cataloging them, not as my loving husband, but as a predator, studying his prey. The phone calls where I cried about another negative pregnancy test, the nights I couldn't sleep, the very real and raw grief of our struggle. He was collecting it all as evidence. The sick parent lie wasn't just a cover for his affair. It was the opening act of his grand betrayal, a way to get out of the house and finalize his plans without me around. The rage that had been a hard diamond in my chest now erupted like a volcano, a white-hot inferno that scorched away my tears and left behind a terrifying, crystalline clarity. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a target. My mind, which moments before had been a storm of chaos, suddenly became preternaturally calm. I saw the chessboard. I saw his opening move. And I knew I had to play the game of my life. I couldn't shatter. I couldn't scream or break things. That was exactly what he wanted. He wanted an emotionally fragile and erratic wife. He was probably waiting for my hysterical phone call, another piece of evidence to add to his collection. I would not give him the satisfaction. With steady hands, I pulled out my phone. I took a picture of the laptop screen, of the email draft, of the birth certificate, of the photos. I then went into his email, found the draft, and forwarded it to a new, secret email address I created on the spot. I sent the photos, the documents, everything from the Nightingale folder. I copied them onto a hidden flash drive I kept in my jewelry box. I was creating my own arsenal. When I was done, I meticulously cleared the browser history, the recently opened files, and closed the laptop, placing it back exactly where I had found it. I went back to the kitchen and picked up the scattered nursery sketches, smoothing them out and placing them back on the table. I washed my face with cold water, looking at the stranger in the mirror. Her eyes were hollow, but they held a glint of steel that hadn't been there before. The woman who had left for the grocery store that afternoon was gone forever. The next morning, his call came right on schedule. I let it ring 3 times before answering, composing my voice into a careful blend of tired and worried. "Mark, is everything okay? I was so worried when you didn't call last night." My performance was flawless. I was the concerned wife, completely oblivious. "I'm so sorry, honey," he said, his voice thick with fake exhaustion. "It was just a really rough night. Dad had some complications. We were at the hospital until dawn." The ease with which he lied was chilling. He was a professional. "Oh, Mark, that's awful," I cooed, my stomach turning. Is he going to be okay?" "We think so. He's a fighter. But listen, Sarah, I think I need to stay a little longer. Maybe through the end of the week. Mom really needs me." "Of course," I said, my voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. "You do whatever you need to do. Don't worry about a thing here. I'm fine. Just focus on your parents." This was his plan, to stay away, to build his case from a distance while I, his supposedly fragile wife, fell apart at home. But I wouldn't fall apart. I would get organized. As soon as we hung up, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but Diana Sterling, a ruthless, take-no-prisoners divorce attorney my boss had once called a shark in a designer suit. I didn't tell her everything over the phone. I just said my husband had left town under suspicious circumstances, and I had reason to believe he was hiding significant assets. Her voice was sharp, clinical. Don't confront him. Don't let him know you suspect anything. Act normal and gather everything. Bank statements, tax returns, deeds, every piece of paper you can find. I have an opening tomorrow at 10. For the rest of the day, I was a machine. I methodically went through our filing cabinets, our safe, every drawer and shoebox in the house. I found things I didn't know existed, a deed to a property I'd never heard of, statements from a bank account in his name only, with a balance that made my head spin. He hadn't just been planning to leave me, he'd been financially disentangling himself for months, maybe years, siphoning off our shared wealth into his secret life. Each document was another nail in the coffin of the man I thought I knew. I printed everything, made copies, and organized it all into a neat, labeled binder. The binder felt heavy in my hands, a testament to the weight of his betrayal. My phone buzzed with another text from him, a picture of a hospital cafeteria tray. Dinner tonight, Grim. Wish I was having your pasta instead. Miss you. I stared at the photo of the sad-looking Salisbury steak and limp green beans. He was a master of details. A lesser man would have just sent the text, but he sent proof. He was creating a digital breadcrumb trail of his fabricated reality. I typed back, "Miss you too. Stay strong. Love you." The words felt like ash in my mouth. The next morning, I dressed for my meeting with Diana Sterling, like I was preparing for battle. A sharp navy blue suit, sensible heels, my hair pulled back in a severe professional knot. I put my binder of evidence in a briefcase. As I was walking out the door, a courier van pulled up. A man in a uniform handed me a small, flat box. It was from a local, high-end baby boutique. "For Sarah Miller," he said. I signed for it, my hands feeling numb. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a tiny silver locket on a delicate chain. The card, in Mark's familiar handwriting, read, "Saw this and thought of our future. Let's never give up hope. I love you to the moon and back." It was a gift, a cruel, calculated piece of psychological warfare, designed to reinforce his narrative of the loving husband, desperate for a child with his wife. He was probably having it sent to our house to further solidify his story to our friends and family in case I started acting erratic. This locket wasn't a symbol of hope. It was a prop in the theater of his deception. I snapped the box shut, a cold smile touching my lips for the first time in days. He had made a mistake. He had just handed me the perfect weapon. I slipped the box into my briefcase next to the binder and walked out to my car, my purpose clear. He thought he was writing the end of my story. He had no idea I was about to write a whole new one for him. Diana Sterling's office was exactly what you'd expect. Minimalist, modern, and perched on the top floor of a downtown skyscraper with a view that screamed power. Diana herself was a blade of a woman with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. I didn't cry. I didn't even let my voice waver. I opened my briefcase and laid everything out on her polished mahogany desk like a general mapping out a campaign. The binder of financial documents, the flash drive. I recounted the story in a flat, emotionless tone, starting with Mark's departure and ending with the locket that had arrived that morning. I placed the small, unopened box on top of the stack of papers. She listened without interruption, her fingers steepled under her chin. When I finished, she was silent for a full minute, her sharp gaze fixed on the evidence. "He's not just an adulterer, Mrs. Miller," she said finally, her voice a low, dangerous hum. "He's a sociopath. The level of premeditation here is extraordinary." She picked up the locket box. "And this is his masterpiece. He's creating a parallel narrative. In his version of the story, he's the devoted husband, and you're the one who's going to snap. It's a classic gaslighting strategy designed to discredit you before you can even speak." She looked at me. a flicker of something that might have been respect in her eyes. Most women would be a wreck by now. You're not. You're organized. That's good. That's what we need. We spent the next 2 hours crafting a counter strategy. Diana was brilliant, her mind a steel trap. The plan was simple in its audacity. We wouldn't just defend against his attack, we would launch a preemptive strike. "He thinks you're fragile," Diana said, a predatory smile touching her lips. "So we'll let him think that. You will continue to play the part of the loving, worried wife. You will text him. You will call him. You will be sweet, supportive, and completely oblivious. Let him build his cage. We'll be busy building the key." Step 1 was to hire a private investigator. Diana had the best in the city on speed dial. His name was Frank, a gruff ex-cop who specialized in marital infidelity. His job was to get irrefutable, time-stamped photographic and video evidence of Mark, Emily, and the baby living as a family unit, not just at his parents' house, but out in public, at the park, the grocery store, a cafe. We needed to prove this wasn't a temporary arrangement, but an established, ongoing life. Step 2 was a deep dive into his finances. Diana's forensic accountant would trace every dollar he'd siphoned off, uncovering the secret property and the hidden accounts. Step 3, the most important part, was about me. "You need to create your own narrative, Sarah," Diana instructed. "You are not a woman on the verge of a breakdown. You are a woman preparing for your future family." On her advice, I scheduled an appointment with the top fertility specialist in the state for the following week, the same clinic Mark and I were supposed to visit together. I booked a consultation with a contractor to get a quote for the nursery renovation. I started a private blog, a diary of my fertility journey, backdating entries to make it look like I'd been writing for months. I wrote about my hopes, my dreams, and my deep, unwavering love for my wonderful, supportive husband, Mark. Every action was a calculated move, creating a digital and real-world footprint of a stable, hopeful, forward-looking woman, a woman who was the polar opposite of the one Mark was trying to paint. For the next week, I lived a double life. By day, I was a whirlwind of activity, meeting with Frank, exchanging encrypted emails with Diana's team, and meticulously documenting my journey to motherhood. By night, I was on the phone with Mark, my voice soft and loving. "How's your dad today?" I'd ask. "A little better, thanks for asking," he's lie. "God, I miss you so much. This house is so empty without you." "I miss you too, baby. More than you know," he'd say, his voice a perfect imitation of sincerity. I wondered where he was when he said those words. Was he in the guest cottage? Was Emily in the room with him? Was he holding Lily? The thought made my blood run cold, but I pushed it down, channeling the ice into my voice, making it sound sweet and sad. Frank, the PI, was worth every penny. He delivered a treasure trove of evidence. Photos of Mark pushing a stroller in a park, videos of him and Emily kissing on the front porch of the guest cottage, receipts from baby stores, all paid for with a credit card I didn't know he had. The most damning piece of evidence was a short video Frank took with a long lens camera through the window of a local diner. It showed Mark and Emily with my parents-in-law, Eleanor and Robert. My gravely ill father-in-law was laughing, spooning mashed peas into his granddaughter's mouth. My distraught mother-in-law was beaming, bouncing the baby on her knee. They were all in on it. The betrayal was a family affair. They had chosen my sister over me. They had watched me suffer through my fertility struggles, knowing their son already had a child. The final piece of our plan was the most difficult. Diana wanted to prove his intent to have me committed. The email draft was good, but it could be explained away as an angry, hypothetical rant. We needed more. We needed him to say it. "He's arrogant," Diana reasoned. "He's so confident in your fragility that he'll get sloppy. You need to give him an opening." The plan was to stage a mini breakdown over the phone. I was to call him, crying, and talk about how empty I felt, how I was starting to lose hope about the baby, how the stress of his dad being sick was getting to me. I hated it. It felt like handing him the very weapon he'd designed, but I trusted Diana. The night we chose was a Friday. I worked myself into a state, thinking about all of it. The lies, the stolen name, his parents' smiling faces. The tears that came were real. I called him, my voice choked with sobs. "Mark, I can't do this," I cried. "I feel like I'm falling apart. This house, it's so quiet. All I can think about is the baby we don't have and your dad, and I feel like I'm going crazy." There was a pause on his end. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. This was it. The moment he'd been waiting for. "Shh, it's okay, honey," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "It's just the stress. I know it's hard." "It's more than stress," I wailed. "Sometimes I think, maybe I'm just not meant to be a mother. Maybe there's something wrong with me." "Don't say that, Sarah," he said, and his tone shifted. It became clinical, detached. "You're just exhausted. You've been under a lot of pressure. Sometimes, when people are under this much pressure, they need help, real help. A place where they can rest and get better, away from all the stress." My blood froze. He was saying it. He was laying the groundwork. "What are you talking about, a hospital?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Not a hospital," he said smoothly. "More like a retreat, a place for people who are overwhelmed. Just for a little while, until you feel like yourself again. I've even been looking into some lovely places for you, just in case, because I love you and I just want you to be healthy." And then he delivered the final devastating blow. "Actually, my mom knows the director at a really wonderful facility. She's going to make a call for us tomorrow, just to get some information." His mother, of course. The web was wider and more wicked than I could have imagined. Eleanor wasn't just a passive accomplice, she was an active player, ready to make the call that would lock me away. My manufactured tears dried up, replaced by a glacial calm. He had just handed me the smoking gun, gift-wrapped and tied with a bow. I let out one last shuddering sob for effect. I don't know, Mark. I'm scared." "Don't be scared," he crooned, the condescension thick in his voice. "I'll take care of everything. You just rest. I'll be home on Sunday to help you pack." He was coming home. The final act was about to begin. I whispered a pathetic-sounding "okay" and we hung up. I immediately hit the button to stop the recording app Diana had instructed me to install on my phone. I sent the file to her. Her reply was instant. "Checkmate, see you Sunday." The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I went through the motions, cleaning the house, preparing food, packing a small overnight bag as my prop for the retreat. Every action felt deliberate, every moment charged with a high-voltage current of anticipation. I was no longer an actor in his play, I was the director of my own. He texted me updates on his drive home, full of feigned excitement to see me. "Almost there, my love. Can't wait to hold you." I felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve. When his silver sedan pulled into the driveway, I was waiting for him, standing on the front porch. I had dressed carefully, a simple, soft gray dress, minimal makeup, the very picture of subdued fragility. He got out of the car, his face a mask of loving concern. "Sarah, baby," he said, rushing up the steps to envelop me in a hug. It took every ounce of self-control I possessed not to flinch. The scent of his aftershave was now mixed with something else, the faint, milky smell of a newborn. It made my stomach churn. "I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone," he murmured into my hair. "But I'm here now. We'll get you the help you need." I pulled back, forcing a watery, grateful smile. "Thank you, Mark. I know you're just trying to take care of me." I led him inside. The house was quiet. "I packed a bag," I said, pointing to the small suitcase by the door. "Good," he said, his eyes scanning the room, probably assessing my mental state. "That's good. We can leave first thing in the morning. My mom has everything set up." He was so confident, so sure of his victory. "Before we talk about that," I said, my voice steady, "I have something for you. A surprise. I walked over to the television in the living room. Sit down. Puzzled but playing along, he sat on the couch, our couch where we had snuggled and dreamed of our future. I picked up the remote. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I said, my back to him, about our journey, about our family. I pressed play. The screen flickered to life. The first image was a high-resolution photo of him, Mark, pushing a stroller in the park, beaming. He let out a sharp, confused sound. The next picture flashed on screen, him and Emily, my sister, kissing on the porch of the guest cottage. He shot to his feet. "Sarah, what is this? What have you been doing?" His voice was sharp, the concern replaced by a sudden edge of panic. A video began to play, the scene from the diner. His gravely ill father laughing, his distraught mother bouncing baby Lily on her knee. The sound was crystal clear, their happy chatter filling our silent living room. Mark stared, his face ashen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "That's the family you were so worried about, right?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I turned to face him. The mask of fragility was gone. My eyes were as hard as diamonds. "While I was at home, sketching out our nursery, you were living in another one." I let the video play out, then switched the input to my laptop. The Nightingale folder appeared on the screen, its contents displayed for him to see. The photos, the baby shower, the birth certificate with the name he had stolen from me. Lily Grace Miller. "Recognize her name?" I whispered. He staggered back, his hand gripping the back of the couch for support. "Sarah, I can explain." "Can you?" I clicked to the final file. The plan. The draft of his email to the lawyer filled the screen, his own words damning him in crisp black letters. I read the last line aloud, my voice ringing with cold fury. "To establish a pattern of mental instability, providing the necessary grounds for an involuntary, psychiatric hold." His face crumpled. The arrogant, confident man was gone, replaced by a cornered, pathetic animal. "You weren't coming home to help me, Mark. You were coming home to have me committed, to lock me away so you could steal my money and my life and run off with my sister." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Mark jumped, his eyes wide with terror. "Who is that?" he hissed. "Just a couple of people who wanted to be here for the end of the show," I said calmly. I opened the door. Standing on the porch were Diana Sterling, looking every bit the shark in her tailored suit, and a burly man in a polo shirt who served Mark with a thick sheaf of papers, divorce proceedings, a restraining order, and a multi-million-dollar lawsuit for fraud, conspiracy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, naming not just him, but Emily and his parents as co-conspirators. He stared at the papers in his hand, then at me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and utter ruin. His meticulously constructed world had been demolished in under 10 minutes. "You," he stammered, "you did all this?" "You underestimated me," I said, my voice void of all emotion. "You thought I was fragile. You were wrong. I just needed the right motivation." Diana stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, I suggest you get your things and leave the premises. You have 1 hour before the restraining order is in full effect. Your attorney will be hearing from me. As for the facility your mother arranged, don't worry. I've already had a chat with the director and sent him a copy of your little plan. The only people who will be questioned about their mental state are you and your conspirators." He stumbled out of the house, defeated. I watched his silver sedan pull away for the last time. It didn't disappear down the street into a haze of love and memory. It slunk away into a future I had authored for it, one of legal battles, public disgrace, and financial ruin. The house was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. The fight wasn't over, but the war was won. I walked over to the nursery sketches still sitting on the kitchen table. For a moment, a wave of sadness washed over me for the dream that had died. But then I picked one up, turned it over, and on the clean white back, I began to sketch something new. It wasn't a nursery. It was a new design for my life, and for the first time in a very long time, it felt full of hope.